What it's like to play in the top chess tournament? Here is the answer. You play some games where you had advantage but then you end up losing, or opposite, you had disadvantage and then you end up winning. This game was really crazy roller coaster and I'm so excited to share with you. This is from round 9 and I played with French player and I started with d4. My opponent played knight on f6, I played c4, g6 and knight c3 and he played bishop g7. Typical king cdn defense. He did not have that many games, so I went by my knowledge. He played d6, I played knight on f3, castle, bishop e2, e5, and bishop on e3. Typical variation, knight g4 and bishop g5. f6 and bishop c1, and he played h5. I really did not expect this move actually. He should have just played knight c6, etc., but he played h5, probably wanted to play knight on h6 next. I played castle, which is inaccuracy. Would be better to play h3, which I was thinking, I don't know why I did not do it. He played knight on h6 and there is bishop e3, protecting pawn on d4. So I played castle and he played knight c6, attacking my pawn on d4. I played h3, I didn't want this knight to stay on g4, knight on h6 and bishop f3. I developed my bishop really well, I have advantage and my pawn is protected. Knight on f7, which is inaccuracy. It would be much better just to play f5 to open this f file and then play f4 and push it. But I played knight on f7, which is bit inactive move, and I played knight d5. Which is really interesting as I wanted to develop my knight to attack the pawn on f6, etc. But I ended up playing knight d5 in the end, and which seems inaccuracy. It would be much better to take on e5, and after takes on e5, maybe the knight d5, and then bishop c5. I think this would be a way better move. But I played knight d5, he played f5, and I took, and he took with bishop. And I played queen d2. Everything seems fine, but soon you will see some madness which started in this game. Queen d7, which is mistake. Just if would be enough to attack this knight on f3 and then after knight on h2, attack g4, etc. Queen d7 and I took, he took, and I played knight g5, which is mistake. Would be also good to play knight on h4 to attack this bishop on f5, and I think this would be a very accurate move. Plus, if he would move on e6, this pawn would be hanging. Knight g5, b6, and knight on f4. Well, I didn't really understand the idea of b6. Probably he didn't want me to play c5, but it's still fine. I should have played here f4, and after knight would move, probably just then trade or knight on f3, and I have center and I'm doing really well here. But I played knight on f4. I wanted to play queen d5 and knight on e6 next. Rook e8, queen d5. Queen d5 was a pretty fast move. I should not have done that. I should have just played rook c1, developed my pieces, etc. So I should have played queen d5. He played king on h8. Would be just better to play knight on f7 to trade these knights. But I played king on h8 and I pushed g4. That's what I meant. This is the craziness I have done. I was taking a lot and I really wanted to win this game, so that's why I pushed g4. G4 has idea. For example, if he would take, I would take, and then queen on h1 and checkmate would be hanging. So that was my point. For example, after knight g4, I would just take and then play queen on h1. And after this move, I just take, and then there will be checkmate or I will win piece. So that was my idea, which my opponent did not do, unfortunately, and he played queen on e7. It was the best move, and I was so surprised that he played that, and I was like hoping that he would take this pawn on g4, which seemed tempting, but probably he saw queen on h1. But still, this position is really, really complicated. This bishop is hanging, king can be opened, and my knight will be hanging on g5, so it is totally mess, and I still don't believe how this game continued and how I ended up this. He played queen on e7 and I played knight g2. Now I got worse position. It would be better to play queen g2 and after queen g5, knight d5, and then take bishop on f5 and open king file. So I played knight g2 and I was thinking that I would just give the pawn and then I would get compensation, but actually here he has better position. I just trade and rook e1. Now I have a really bad position. Would be better to play queen c6, which I was thinking take, and after queen g5 just simply trade this. But I'm not sure if it would be good to go in this endgame as he has bishop, I have weak king, pawn is lost, etc. So I really didn't want to go for that. So I wanted to remain dynamic position. So I played rook on e1, and which is like worse. He should have just played knight c5, and he has extra pawn after f4, bishop h6. But it's so hard to remain calm in this kind of positions. It's absolutely hard because everything is hanging. King is weak. These pieces are hanging. It's really dynamic, so it's really easy to make mistake, especially when you spend a lot of time on thinking. He played knight b4, and I played queen d2. Strong move. Attacking knight on b5, and then developing rooks. He played queen on e5, which is mistake. See here, he blundered. Just moves like queen on f6 would be much better, and queen b4 is not hanging, as he would take on e3, and I'm losing this game. So he played queen e5, and here I found a very great, brilliant move. Knight on f7. The idea here is that, of course, queen is hanging, so they are forced to take, and then I play bishop on f4, I'm taking exchange. Well, I am winning exchange, but my opponent has 2 pawns, so it's very hard to win this kind of game. He played king on h7, I played queen d1. So idea here is to attack the knight on g4, queen on f3, etc. But, well, actually it's pretty worse. Would be better to play rook e4 probably, or maybe just trade these queens. But I played queen d1, and here he played knight on e5, which is another mistake because he lets me to trade this strong knight, he takes, and then I have queen g4, and now I'm winning. I don't know what's happening in this game. I didn't know during the game because it was totally mess. And look, my time is always less than my opponent, so I still don't believe how it continued. Queen d2 and knight on e3. This is win, but still very hard because f2 pawn will be hanging. Eventually, my king is weak, so I was very nervous, and at the same time it was very complicated to play this. Knight d3 and queen on h3. Strong move, bishop h6, and here I made a mistake. I should have played here queen on e6, and now this rook is hanging, and anywhere this rook moves, then can be knight g4 and checkmate ideas, etc. I don't know why I declined it, but as you can see, I had only 1 minute and 27 seconds, so it was very hard to play in this game. I play knight g4, queen g5, strong move, and f3, only move. Well, seems like I am winning, but it's so tough to win because my opponent has pawns, so extra pawns in exchange. Knight on f4, queen on h2, knight f3, and king on h1. And now, after queen g4, which I missed, I don't know what would I do, like rook on h8, king on h8, queen on h6, rook on h7, take, and take on g4, and this is very big chance for black to make it as a draw. And I'm really happy that he did not find queen g4, which I saw as soon as I did king on h1, and I'm happy that he played queen on h5. This is good because I take, and then I play knight on e5, and I just take, and even though my opponent has bishop and pawn in exchange, it's easier to play in this endgame. So he played h4 and king g2. Idea is to push my king to the center and take this pawn. King g6, rook on e6, king on h5, and rook e1. Well, also rook d1 would be way better because then rook e5 ideas, rook d1 ideas, etc. instead of doubling these rooks on e-file. Bishop f4, and I played rook e7 just simply to trade these rooks. Again, rook e8 would be better, but I was just doing my best to win time and not to lose on time. So I really wanted to trade these rooks, and then I thought that it would be easier to win, but I'm not really sure. But it would be, in my opinion, would be easier. He played this move, I repeated, and then I played rook e8, which seems inaccuracy. Probably king on h3 or rook on h7 back, but it's still a bit hard to play. But here I played rook on h8, and now I am winning eventually because my opponent is getting into zugzwang, and my rooks are really strong. Pawn on h4 will be hanging eventually, and then I'm winning. c5, I took back this pawn, which made me really happy. King g3, I took, and I took on h2. You can't take with rook because there's bishop on f4. And there was other options, I think. There was also to play rook g4 or f4 or maybe rook b7, but I was just like, let's take, because after king g2, this endgame is win, because b6 pawn is really weak, and I'm going to trade now rooks, which I did. And next move would be rook on e6. And here he just resigned, because after rook on e6, I'm just simply winning. As I have already exchanged up, but when I trade one rook, it's very much enough to win the game. So hope you liked this recap. So make sure to give thumbs up if you enjoyed and subscribe my YouTube channel and let me know in the comments how did you like this game.